At the time this picture was taken, I had just turned 5 years old. The year was 1991, and there were some pretty significant changes that were taking place. The Cold War was coming to an end. Tim Berners-Lee was about to unleash the World Wide Web upon the general public.
Let's start with the basics first. There are 3 important services you can access on the internet. Surfing the World Wide Web.
Surfing? That sounds pretty cool already.
Andrew, don't interrupt. Andrew, don't interrupt. Andrew, don't interrupt.
Andrew, don't interrupt.
But more importantly, Eric Red's thriller, Body Parts, was released in the theaters. Since I was only 5 at the time, I didn't get a chance to see this film until 6 years later, during a sleepover at my friend's house. His name was Aaron, and unlike my family, Aaron's parents were more accepting of his counterculture interests like punk music and skateboarding. Because of this, Aaron was the first kid in our class who showed up to school wearing a girthy pair of JNCOs. To me, those jeans were the ultimate symbol of rebellion, and I was completely enamored by them. After we finished watching Body Parts and were tucked into bed, I waited patiently until I heard snoring sounds signaling that Aaron was sound asleep. I then snuck out of bed and rifled through his closet for all the pairs of JNCOs I can find. For the next 2 hours, I tried on numerous pairs in front of a mirror, while performing imaginary kickflips and throwing peace signs into the air. I would have stayed up all night doing this if Aaron's dad hadn't walked in on me, while giving me the most confused and dumbfounded look I have ever seen on a human face. I was never invited back again. The star of Body Parts is the legendary Jeff Fahey. Most people my age will probably know Fahey best for his portrayal of a mentally disabled lawnmower man in the sci-fi film, The Lawnmower Man.
I even have one that could help make you smarter.
I was born dumb.
In this film he plays Bill, a criminal psychologist who gets into a serious car accident which results in the loss of his arm. After the accident, Bill's wife gives Dr. Agatha Webb permission to perform an experimental arm transplant, which turns out to be a great success. Not long after, Bill begins to experience some negative side effects with his arm transplant. He cuts himself shaving, experiences violent imagery, and even KOs his son during a playful wrestling match. During an interview with the convicted killer, the inmate points out that the tattoo on his arm signifies that the previous owner was on death row. After finding this out, Bill scans his new fingerprints and discovers that his arm transplant came from a mass murderer named Charlie Fletcher. After this, Bill discovers that Charlie's other arm and pair of legs have been donated to 2 other recipients. Just like Bill, the new limbs have a dramatic effect on their lives. There's Remo Lacey, an uninspired painter whose new arm gives him the ability to create sought-after works of art. Then there's Mark Draper, whose newly acquired pair of legs gives him unmatched skills on the basketball court. Unfortunately, shortly after Bill establishes a relationship with these 2 men, they are quickly murdered by Charlie Fletcher, who is on the hunt for his missing body parts. After the murders, Bill finds out that Dr. Webb was keeping Charlie alive by transplanting his head on another person's body. Ultimately, the film culminates in a bloodbath, with Bill confronting Charlie and the people responsible for his resurrection. One of the first things I noticed when rewatching this film was that it's a really tight movie in terms of structure. The runtime is around 90 minutes and every plot point happens where it should occur. Every scene has a function, and they all work together to advance the story at a narrative pace that is never boring. Besides its well-crafted structure, Body Parts is also really nice to look at. There's a lot of striking imagery in this film that is incredibly gruesome, but at the same time quite beautiful. Perhaps the best example of this is the car crash scene in the beginning of the film. This scene is the primary reason why I wanted to revisit this movie. In my opinion, Body Parts features one of the best car crash scenes ever put on film. If I had to pick one adjective to describe how this entire sequence plays out, it would be pornographic. There's a slow build-up as Bill watches the car in front of him gradually losing its wheel. The sudden panic as he desperately tries to avoid the inevitable, and the deer in headlights look he gives right before his car ejaculates his entire body through the windshield. Unlike a regular porn scene which ends with one money shot, this scene concludes with 5 money shots, expertly stitched together. Let's take a moment to look at the slowed down version of this collision. What makes this great is that the entire sequence was accomplished with practical effects. Look at this stunt guy flying through the air as a car launches upward right next to him. You can tell there was a lot of planning that went into constructing such a gruesome sequence. There's even a deleted scene that was most likely cut to avoid an NC-17 rating. Eric Red has stated in the past that test audiences found this scene tonally out of place with the rest of the film, which I don't disagree with. I just feel its inclusion would have made a great scene absolutely perfect. In terms of style, Body Parts closely resembles the films of David Cronenberg for its use of body horror and for the portrayal of a character whose physical transformation gives birth to violence and alienation. In fact, Body Parts is strikingly similar to Cronenberg's 1986 masterpiece, The Fly. Check out the scene when Bill discovers that his arm transplant came from a convicted serial killer. Now look at the scene in The Fly, when Seth Brundle discovers that his DNA has been spliced together with the genetic material of an insect. There's also some scenes where both characters have philosophical conversations about the nature of the flesh.
I mean, where is evil, where does it live? Does it live in the, soul? In the mind? Maybe it lives in the heart? Maybe it lives in the flesh.
I bet you think that you woke me up about the flesh, don't you? But you only know society's straight line about the flesh. You can't penetrate beyond society's sick, gray fear of the flesh. Drink deep, or taste not the plasma spring. See what I'm saying?
Even some of the scenes look like they were shot in the same locations in Toronto. The main reason why I'm bringing up the similarities between these two films is to illustrate my biggest criticism of Body Parts, which is that it never really pulls the trigger in exploring its themes. Even though the film is filled with violent and horrific imagery, the way Body Parts treats its themes of body horror seems extremely tame and surface level compared to the works of David Cronenberg. This is especially true for the arc of the main protagonist, which is wasted in the final act. After Bill kills Charlie Fletcher and gets back together with his family, it's revealed in voiceover that after killing Charlie, the violent side effects of the arm transplant have stopped completely. It's hinted that Bill now has a darker side to him after he mocks Charlie in the final words of his book, but that's all it really is. Just a hint. I just feel that this type of film deserves a better conclusion than the happily ever after ending that it's trying to pull off. While I don't think that it's mandatory for every body horror film to end on a depressing note, I do feel that a film whose protagonist has punched his child in the head, nearly strangled his wife to death, and even participated in an actual murder shouldn't try to pretend that everything will be hunky-dory for the character and his family. To put it bluntly, this dude is permanently f***ed up, and giving him a happy ending is thematically dishonest. For this reason, Body Parts is a film that feels like it's flirting with the themes it's trying to convey, but never really committing to them. While Body Parts does have its problems, the things it gets right greatly outweigh any issue I have with the film. One of its greatest strengths is its unapologetic exhibition of gruesome imagery. The makeup effects are in a league of their own, and will leave the viewer feeling as though they received a blood transfusion with an IV bag filled with liquefied latex. Body Parts also features a pretty solid cast, and Fahey's performance is one of the best parts of the film. Fahey excels at portraying the extremes of human behavior, and his role in Body Parts is no exception. He's great at playing a family man, but even better at playing a family man whose mental boundaries are being pushed to the limits.
Fuck you and all your bullshit! I want this fucking arm off!
I also think Eric Red deserves a huge amount of praise for his skillful direction, especially when it comes to the vehicular action set pieces. I mentioned earlier that Body Parts had one of the best car crash scenes ever put on film, but what is equally impressive is the car chase scene that occurs in the film's third act, when Charlie handcuffs his arm to Bill's, and then proceeds to speed recklessly through traffic. For those of you looking to explore other films directed by Eric Red, I highly recommend Bad Moon, which is my favorite werewolf movie of all time. The main reason why Body Parts holds a special place in my heart is because it reminds me of a better time in Hollywood filmmaking. It was a time when studios were more willing to put their trust in up-and-coming filmmakers who were passionate about the stories they wanted to tell. You would be hard-pressed to find a film in our current market with a fraction of the creative vision that is contained within Body Parts. I think that about does it for this review. But before I go, I feel it necessary to warn people who are looking to stream this movie that there is another film titled Body Parts that was released in 1992. Unfortunately, it does not have the same qualities that made 1991's Body Parts so great.
Thank you.
I made you some coffee.
You didn't have to do that.
Oh, but I wanted to. Would you like sugar?
No, thank you.
Cream?